All right, greetings and blessings on this Friday. Um, I'm back. Still going to ask for prayers for my eyes. They're getting a bit blurrier, but I'm hoping, like just when right after I had surgery on both eyes, I didn't get my vision back right away because the retina um, got inflamed and swollen because they actually have to go inside the eyeball for the type of surgery that I had. And so I'm hoping that's what the case is. And I'm on three different eye drops every day. Um, and so I'm just praying for God's healing. Okay. So, anyway, for today, I want to go to the book of Hebrews in chapter 10. Now, Hebrews chapter 10 is very similar to Psalm 40. They talk about some of the very similar things. And so the writer here is actually quoting Psalm 40, but quoting Christ as well. Because in verse 5, 6, and 7, it says, "Therefore, when Christ came into the world, he said, 'Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. With burnt offerings and sin offerings you were not pleased.' Then I said, 'Here I am. It is written about me in the scroll. I have come to do your will, my God.'" Now, when he talks about it, it's written about me in the scroll, he's talking about going back to Psalms because that would have been in the scrolls. Okay. So he's going back to the Psalms. And I'm going to go to verse 6, 7, and 8 in Psalm 40. It says, "Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but my ears you have opened. Burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not require." Now think about when this was written. This was written centuries before Jesus ever came along. And back then, they had days of the year that they would offer the sacrifices, the burnt sacrificing. It was Jewish law. But here's the writer of Psalms saying, "Burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not require. Then I said, 'Here I am, I have come. It is written about me in the scroll. I desire to do your will, my God. Your law is within my heart.'" Now, what they're doing is they're going back to Luke chapter 22. Jesus was in Gethsemane in the garden. I've been there. It's really a small place, actually. It was surprisingly small, the Garden of Gethsemane, and old. But obviously, because Jesus was there. So Jesus was in the garden and he knew that he was going to be arrested. He knew he was going to be beaten. He knew he was going to go to the cross and die. He knew that's what was coming up. But in Luke chapter 22 and verse 42, it says, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me. Yet not my will, but yours be done." Now, it's interesting because this is written as one sentence. But I wonder if there was a pause in there. I wonder if there was a pause. I can imagine Jesus really struggling with this, knowing what he was facing, and asking God, "Father, if you are willing, take this cup from me." Then I wonder if he paused right there. It's a good thought. And then said, "Yet not my will, but yours be done." See, Jesus was being obedient to God's will, even facing his sacrifice. I think there's sometimes that we're not willing to go that extra step to be obedient to God's will. 100%. 100%. Look what it says in Psalm 40 again. I want to keep going after verse 8. Going to verse 9. "I desire to do your will, my God. Your law is within my heart." Now, the writer here was not going to be crucified. But what did he understand God's will to be? Keep going to verse 9. "I proclaim your saving acts in the great assembly. I do not seal my lips, Lord, as you know. I do not hide your righteousness in my heart. I speak of your faithfulness and your saving help. I do not conceal your love and your faithfulness from the great assembly." That's what he understood God's will to be for him at that moment. I wonder if we were 100% obedient to God's will. When my youngest son was about third grade or so, he had to write a paper for school. And I got a phone call from the teacher. And she said she wanted to meet with us. And I went, oh, no. So he wrote a one page, just the front of a page, a full page paper, what I want to be when I grow up. And it said, when I grow up, I think I'm going to be a preacher, even though I don't want to be one. That's what he said. He said, because if God calls him to be a preacher, he has to be obedient to that call. I tell you what, I was so proud of him that day. The teacher, it just knocked her socks off. It was a Christian church ran school. And he wrote, I think when I grow up, I'm going to be a preacher, even though I don't want to be one. Because, see, he had seen what I went through with seminary. And, of course, you hear people talking in the church when they disagree with me. And then we had to move to Alabama. And we racially integrated the church, which some people objected to. And the church paid for him to go to private school because they didn't want him going to the public school there. And so, we were carting him to school every day, and it was tough. And he saw what I was going through. But isn't that amazing that a child, 9 years old maybe, say, but if it's God's will, or if God tells him to be, worse to that effect, if God tells him to be a preacher, then he will. Wow. Do we really sit and reflect on what God's will is? Do we keep in contact with God? Do we keep in prayer so that we can hear him, so we can feel what his will is? I know when I took my leave of absence from the church back in 2003, I clearly understood that's what God was instructing me to do. And I kind of did what Jesus did here. I said, well, God, what's option B? He said, there is no option B. You leave. Oh, that was a very, very difficult decision. But I understood that to be God's will, and he confirmed that in some very powerful ways. So do a little bit of praying today. Ask God, what would he want you to do? Even if it's just for today, or for the next hour, or the next week, or the next month, whatever. God will let you know. Guys, that's my devotion for today. I hope it touches each and every one of you and that these words would bless you. Again, I am continuing to ask for prayers for my eyes. I put drops in them throughout the day and they get red and irritated. And but, God heals. And so I have faith. But I do appreciate the prayers. All right. I would pray that each and every one of you remains blessed and that God's presence would be made known to you today, tomorrow, for all your days. Amen.